Welcome to another episode of Adultish Presents Fifi After Dark, where your host, Afiya, is left all alone with the recording equipment and a drink in her hand. You can listen, like, comment, share, and subscribe to Adultish on most streaming platforms, as well as find us on Twitter at AdultishP0DCAST. And welcome to a new episode of Fifi After Dark, aka FAD. It's your girl Afiya, and I just had a shot of Punto vodka. Punto vodka from Port Morris Distillery here in New York City, the Bronx to be specific. For this really quick segment of Fifi After Dark, I just wanted to touch base on the conversation in the previous podcast with me and Vincent, which was how to cohabitate with Bay. And there was a few things that I wanted to jump on for just a few moments of your time, if you don't mind, with regards to cohabitation and living together with your partner and living separate apart, which is the lifestyle that Vincent seems most interested in having. So in the conversation that we talked about the idea of, once you're living with another person, it's a pretty big deal. A lot of people these days, I feel, tend to not think too much about the idea of living with another person because it's almost out of necessity, right? We're living in a time right now where living by yourself is so hard to do that living with another person is probably the easiest and the cheapest option you can go, right? You're sharing an apartment, you're doing a room share, you're doing an apartment share, or, if you're dating someone or with someone for a certain amount of time, or if the relationship has gotten serious and you've decided to take that next step into living with each other in order to save on rent or to save on bills or groceries or light or whatever the case may be. However, I just did want to point out that it really is a big deal. And I know I kind of talked about it and I kind of stressed it a little bit, but I'm going to continue to stress it, that living with another person is quite a deal and it's not something to be taken lightly. As I said, once you move in with someone, or once the two people decide that we are going to live together, there is a lot of sharing that has to go into that. And with the sharing comes the compassion. With the compassion comes the compromise, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're sharing this space with the person, as I said, you're sharing bills, you're sharing money, you're sharing light, but you're sharing life. You're sharing life source. You're sharing energy, right? You're sharing sleep. You're sharing wake. You're sharing love. You're sharing hate. You're sharing all of those things that come through the door with you every day when you come home from work. Whatever that stress of the world is that comes in the door with you, guess who else is getting a whiff of that, who's getting a smell of that? The person who you're living with. Whatever stress is of the world that's coming your way, guess who's getting a whiff of that? The person that you're living with. And also inversely, if you have tons of happy energy, you got tons of great things going on, and all that positive energy is floating around you, you're bringing that into the home, and you're going to continue to try and keep that manifesting, keep that going. So it is a big deal, and it's something to really think about when you are sharing a space with another person. Just to bring it to me and not to be, selfish or hogging the conversation, if you will. But I found that for myself, when I lived with my ex-husband, it was a big deal. And like I said, it was a culture shock for me, because at the end of the day, or actually I shouldn't say at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, when I moved in with my ex, I had not lived by myself. I had lived with my parent, and my siblings for many, 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 many years, which means that I always had an idea and an ideal way in which I wanted to live when I lived when I lived on my own, right? When I lived by myself, and not to say single as in like as a single woman, but single as a singular being, as a one person household. And so when I moved in with my ex-husband, I took a lot of those singular ideas with me. A lot of this is how I would treat my place. This is how I would clean my place. This is how I would stock it. This is how I would paint it. This is how I would decorate it. This is how I would try to maintain a good flow of energy. This is how I would try to maintain, just having good vibes around me. This is what I would do when I was feeling down. This is what I would do when I was feeling up. This is what I would tackle in the house when I had time. And these are the things that I would know to put to the side when I didn't, want to be bothered. I had a lot of that, having lived with other people and having to live by other people's rules for many, 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 many years. I had already designed the rules and regulations that I would have had from my home had I lived by myself. And so I took a lot of that with me when I moved in with my my now ex-husband. And so again, culture shock, because as a person who had lived on his own for some years, not even many, many years, but for a person who had lived on his own for a substantial amount of years, he had the rules and regulations that he created for himself. He had the ideas of what it was to run his household. He had the ideas on what it would mean in order to, what it would mean for him to live productively and live fulfilled and be content and feel great about being in his living space. And in him having his set of rules and in me having my set of rules, the two of us coming together again was supposed to be a meeting of the minds, or should have been a meeting of the minds. It should have been a meeting of, well, how do you do things? What is comfort for you? Okay. And what is comfort for me? And how can we marry the two in this space that we both have to live in? Now, unfortunately for me, I think that vodka is hitting me really hard because I didn't eat anything since about 12 o'clock this afternoon, and it is now about 8 something in the evening. So my stomach is just, ingesting all of this beautiful Punto vodka. Anyway, what was an issue for the two of us was the fact that unfortunately for me, and the issue for the two of us is that the space that we were sharing was just not conducive for me to live the ideas that I wanted, right? To fully express the concept of what is a home, right? I couldn't build my home in that space. And it had nothing really to do, well, actually lies. It had a lot to do with the way in which he ran the space. And it also had a lot to do with the space itself. You see, now my ex-husband was a person that he kind of played it by ear when he lived the way he lived, meaning that he was very nonchalant about his space. He was not big about he wasn't big about personalizing the space to be a reflection of himself. And I'm big on personalizing spaces so that when someone steps into a room, they know this is Afiya's room. When someone steps into my space, they know this is Afiya's realm. This is how Afiya is able to live in comfort. This is how Afiya is able to express herself and to relax and to be her whole singular humanness, right? Like, that's me. I think personalization is a big deal when it comes to living in this space. Because again, this is a space where you're going to live, you're going to eat, you're going to breathe, you're going to sleep, you're going to shit, you're going to think, for some people, this is, your forever house. This is where you intend to, start your family and raise your family and build your home and share memories and create everlasting experiences. So for me, personalization is a big deal. And he was not big on that. Like the most he did was maybe put up a few pieces of wall art, and his trophies, because he used to play, he used to play like football and like sports and other sports and stuff like that. So he used to get trophies for those things. And so that would be his personalization. Everything else in the apartment, however, were like hand-me-downs or things that he just never thought to like throw away or to replace because, money. Like, well, why am I going to throw this away? Because it's functional. I'm like, just because it's functional doesn't mean that you have to keep it. It's functional, but it's old and it's dingy and like it doesn't reflect who you are as a person. It looks like something that belonged to an older woman, which was his mom. So there was that. And then also there was the idea about like cleanliness and just overall housekeeping things that I think he had grown accustomed to having like a woman in his life do those things. And so he did not feel very strongly about those things. And then of course, as a woman, I felt very strongly about those things. And that's not to say that there aren't men out there who aren't about cleanliness, because I grew up around quite a few of them. And if they had seen the way in which we kind of lived, they would have been very upset and unhappy with that. But I say all of that to say that, coming together to live together is a big deal. It's a combination of those two personalities and those two personalizations, and trying to find the compromise in how we can both personalize this space so that it can reflect the both of us almost equally, such that we can both feel extremely comfortable and able to meet the needs that we internally desire or have to have in order to feel like this is home. I think it's not just a matter of living with someone. It's a matter of this is home. It's a matter of creating a home with someone. And I think people tend to take that very lightly when people move in with each other. Like I said, I stress the importance of that. I stress the importance of doing those little tricks and tips that I mentioned. Like if you're dating someone and you're thinking about living with them, spend time with them, right? Go to their home and their space and their fortress of solitude, if you will, and be there with them for, if it is a few days at a time, a day at a time, then 2 days at a time, then a weekend, then maybe 2 weekends in a row, and then see them during the week, and then spend a night during the week to see how the other half lives, and then have them do the same thing with you, because I think it's important for people to see how other people live. I think it's very, 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 very important to see how people's routines are. It could be the archaeologist or the anthropologist in me that's all about observation and documentation, right? Learning how the others live, learning how, because that's me. Archaeology is all about learning about past civilizations, learning how these people once lived in a time long before us and how they were able to make that work. That's what I want to see. Looking at the anthropology is all about the study of different cultures and all that other good stuff. And again, same deal. I think everyone should take the opportunity to do that. Like I said, I have, so as it is right now, I feel like I have to stress that to people, and I have to let people understand there's so much, there's so many layers to it. Like I said, and like Vincent said, there's so many layers to the living together or living together apart thing. Because again, like I said, you want people to see how you move, how you live. Are you a person that you put the toilet paper up on the, you grab toilet paper from the top, or do you roll it on the bottom? Which one do you prefer? Which one is the one that works best for you, right? And I think when we allow each other to see how the other lives, we can get a better understanding of how that would fit overall into the grand scheme of how we would live together. I personally feel that if I had spent more time staying over at my now ex's home, that I would have probably felt more comfortable living with him. And the reason why I didn't spend a lot of time with him is, of course, because like I said, I came from a background that was very, it was wrought in like moral moral dignities, you know, like it's not right for a young woman who's not engaged to a man to like spend nights at his place, and you know, why marry the cow if you're giving the milk away for free bullshit. And so